TTB Music Podcast.
Sound of a fan.
Stunned. All right, we're on, are we? Oh, okay, excellent.
The lights are all lighting.
Everything. Do you know what? I listened to one of our podcasts recently.
Did you?
Yeah.
Is that the one that ended before it's meant to end?
Possibly. Did we do one of those recently as well?
We did. Apparently, my editing skills were somewhat lacking. I think
it finished before it was meant to finish.
The second podcast was cut somewhat short.
Oh right.
I discovered by also listening to one of our podcasts.
Oh right. Oh, excellent. Well,
obviously, I knew this because of all the people, all our listeners that had emailed to say beforehand.
Let me just check my mailbox. No.
Yeah.
Oh.
Never mind.
Yeah, anyway, so what I was about to say was I was listening to one of our podcasts recently. I don't know, we all have all this jingles and stuff at the start. Hooray! Well done.
Jingle, jingle.
Anyway, should we do this properly now?
Yes. Right. Podcast 5.
Ooh.
So we've almost caught up, halfway through the year, not bad. So 6 albums for our discussion, as per usual. Nathalie Prass, The Future and the Past. Chvrches, Love is Dead. Lily Allen, No Shame. Courtney Barnett, Tell Me How You Really Feel. Oneohtrix, Point Never, Age Of. And Lykke Li, So Sad, So Sexy. Even rhymes.
Excellent.
So kicking off things, Nathalie Prass, her second album, her first album was a favourite on the podcast.
I remember.
Does the second one live up to the promise or not, Peter?
Tricky, this one, because it is different.
It is different.
It's very different, and as ever, that is to be commended. Actually, there's a real sort of love of a particular blend of funk and soul that sort of permeates throughout this album.
Absolutely.
At times, which is really good, and it's really done well. So I mean, for me, I was like, opening track, Nathalie Prass, more like Natalie Prince.
There is a bit of that going on. Actually, yeah, I know, Mark. Yeah.
Oh, this is brilliant. The gags and everything. You know, so you start with something that's very, very Prince-esque, and for the second podcast in a row, I'm going to say in all his funk and glory, or words to that effect. Did I say pomp and circumstance last time? I can't remember. That doesn't matter. What matters is that this album gradually morphs across, different shades of R&B. Before ending, as I said, in something that's very akin to sort of 70s style, almost disco. Do you know what I mean? That sort of particular sound that you only get on 70s records of a particular, end of the soul spectrum. Which was interesting. And I'm thinking in particular of the track "Never Too Late."
Yeah.
Which it sounded like something that could have been cut from
absolutely
something 40 years ago. It was, but done well, But overall, I have to say, not my thing. This album didn't quite hit with me, if I'm honest. But I can perhaps see, and maybe it's the difference in style. But then again, she demonstrated that difference in style even with that first album, because I seem to recall when we went and saw her live, it was like seeing a completely different version of the album.
Yes, because there was no strings or anything like that, which is the first album. For our dedicated listener, the first album was very stringy.
Very, very stringy. So, I mean, as I said, commendable, very clever, and probably almost certainly deserves repeated listenings.
This is a classic third listen album
Thought
for
it
me.
might be. Yeah.
First 2 listens, I was like, quite, it's fine, quite getting this. Quite like the lyrical kind of leanings of it, kind of, Me Too, girl power type stuff going on. And the third listen, I suddenly went, oh, now I get it. Yeah, it's all coming together.
Right.
As you say, it has that whole There's very much. I mean, when we saw her live, she did a Janet Jackson cover.
Yes.
And
yeah, that makes sense now.
you can definitely, bizarrely, you can definitely hear that influence on this record. But it's like Janet Jackson from the 80s, taken back to the 70s.
Yeah.
As the starting point, rather than so you're spot on when you said there's a definite R&B soul vibe, but very much a 70s R&B light soul vibe running through the heart of this record, with kind of that kind of replacing the lush strings that were prevalent on that first record, but even going on from there's still elements of kind of just gentle pop in there as well. There's a couple of tracks on here where I kind of thought, Haim could be doing this. Which it's I think it might be The Fire and something else. But Into the Fire. I could see them singing this song. There was another song later on that was also a bit. A bit like that. Love the track Sisters. A true, power to the sisters, power to women kind of anthem kind of song. Lost, I think, is just a beautiful song, and that reminded me much more of the style of the first album. And similarly, did Hot for the Mountain. Really like the use of lyrics on the second last track, Far From You, which is dedicated to kind of Karen Carpenter, and it even kind of reworks the why do birds suddenly appear every time you are near. It's kind of reworking of that, saying tell me why do they suddenly disappear instead of singing here, which I thought was quite nice.
Yeah,
a nice touch. So I'm now kind of 5 listens into this album, and it's going to be up there in definitely in my top 5 at the moment for records thus far this year.
Okay,
I reckon. So yeah, I like it, and it's a grower, kids. It's a grower.
I'll give it another crack.
A funky grower.
Yeah, cool.
Moving away from the funk to the third outing from Glasgow's Chvrches, and time to get the synths out.
Yeah.
Where to start? This is. I mean, I can't remember if we reviewed the second album or not. I know we didn't review the first one.
We've reviewed one of them.
It would have been the second one then. This doesn't change their formula, particularly. They are very much a straight-ahead synth pop band of the kind that were many in the 80s and are now almost non-existent, which actually makes Chvrches stand out quite well actually as a pop band currently. Because there genuinely isn't many people doing what they're doing, and the people that aren't doing it in, dare I say, this kind of pure form. They're doing it and then having some rap going on, or they're having some more dance aspects coming in. Yeah. This is very much an album, perhaps different production values, but they're making records that could have been made in the 80s.
Yeah.
I don't say that as a bad thing, because basically what they're trying to do is make well-crafted synth pop songs, and I think this album is chock full of well-crafted synth pop songs. I like. It's poppy, it's boppy, it's dancey, it's kind of everything you want from this kind of record. It's not consistent. It's not totally consistent. There are definitely highs and lows, and some of it sounds, better than others for me. But I think it starts off really well with Graffiti and Get Out, and then there's some other great pop moments. Never Say Die and Heaven, Hell, and Forever, my personal favourite on the album at the moment. It's just really, really fun, and they also managed to throw in a really nice ballad as well, which I really liked. The one, is it Really Gone?
Yeah.
Which I think is a really, really nice song. Bizarrely, the collab with Matt from The National,
Hey.
My Enemy, doesn't really work for me particularly. It's not bad in any sense, but it just jars a bit.
It jars because I think the rest of the album is so consistently good and follows a particular formula, and the formula is the band as they are.
Yeah.
You know, with her up front doing the majority of the vocal work. I think that's why it suddenly pulls you out of that. I think there's always a risk with collaboration, particularly when you have a very set sound. That when you do drop something different, I mean, that sort of collaboration, I think always works better, either on an album that is deliberately collaborative, or maybe is it dropped away as a B-side, or an extra track somewhere. Do you know what I mean? A B-side. You know what I mean.
I do know what I mean. Yes.
In fact, most people now know what I mean because vinyl's so in. Which brings me back to the 80s, and when of course vinyl was prevalent, and so was synth pop music with religious overtones.
Yes.
You know, this took me back.
If only we knew a band that used to write stuff like that. Yeah.
I knew another band that used to write stuff like that. I'm sure their name will come back to me shortly. But references, oblique or otherwise, to Depeche Mode. I'm sweeping with that 80s nostalgia. I think this is actually an awesome pop album in its own right. I think lyrically it's fun, musically it's fun, and you've listed all the best tracks on it. I mean, I pulled out Heaven, Hell, Miracles, and Graffiti again.
Yeah. As
some of my personal favourites. And thinking of the mode, there's a wonderful little instrumental called Two, italics.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the album, Roman numeral 2, and which sort of is a little bit noodling, but then goes straight into the track Wonderland.
Yes.
So and that was pure Depeche Mode. Talking about B-sides, that was a pure Depeche Mode instrumental tucked away somewhere. I loved it. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed this album a lot. And
produced by our friend Greg Kirsten. Remember Greg from producing the Foo Fighters album, and he also cropped up on the Rappy album as well.
Yeah. Rappy album.
The one that everyone thought was the best album of the year.
Which Rappy album? Which
the rapper that
Drake?
No, the rapper that everyone likes.
Oh, one of our rappers?
No.
No.
I can't remember his name. It's really embarrassing. But also, he also co-wrote Liam's half of Liam's album.
Really? Oh, him? Right.
Yeah.
That Greg.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think which rapper you mean now. Oh, really?
Yeah. Greg, who, funnily enough, produced most of the previous albums by the next person we're reviewing.
Oh, right.
But not the current record.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Right. Gotcha. Cool. Well, moving on.
Yeah. So, moving on to the fourth album, which I thought, was surprising. In some ways, I thought she made more, but clearly not.
Maybe she just filled the airspace.
Lily Allen and No Shame.
In between. Which is probably a theme on this album, isn't it? Lily Allen, No Shame. And this is, as with her, I think we've reviewed one of her albums before, I'm pretty certain we have. But as with all her albums, it's very much driven by her strong personality, and I mean that and I do mean that in a very complimentary way. Her sort of acerbic take on fame.
I wrote acerbic down.
Did you write acerbic? What's that? It's the first time I've used it in a podcast.
I'm using acerbic and astute.
Really? Oh, wow, how's about that?
I was doing a bit of alliteration.
Hey, a bit of alliteration. Charming. Which is another word I'm about to use. Acerbic take on fame, Twitter. Sort of familiar themes for her, but yet seemingly still sounds fresh. and the album's sort of very in your face in that sort of way that Robbie Williams can be in your face, you know.
Yes.
When he performs, but then what's curious about, and I seem to remember this as a theme from a previous album of hers. Then about halfway through the album, or a third of the way through the album, it drops into this very charming, there it is, sort of sequence of tracks, which begins with Family Man, which is very sort of Beatlesy in its sort of melodies.
Yeah, I guess so.
And the tone of the album just suddenly changes. It's almost like, you know, flip the record over and it's a different piece of work. So after all the talk at the beginning of Dicks is quite different.
Yeah.
You know, and it's and there's about 3 tracks there, one of which is called 3. I mean, 3 is very cute,
which I like, and that's it's also quite a clever song. Because obviously it's addressing obviously the problem of balancing work and parenting, but as kind of voiced by her children essentially. Yeah, which is it feels more personal. I think the beginning of the album feels like Lily Allen the star, and then the middle of the album you get Lily Allen the human being, which is nice. The pace picks up again for me towards the end, however, and there's again some great lyrics in here. I like the one where she rhymes put the loser in an Uber. I like that. That tickled me. On the track, I think it was my one. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so those are my thoughts. Good pop album again.
Yeah, I mean, I like it, but I suppose was in some ways disappointed with it as well. Partly because I think the album that we did review, I just looked up this funny when
it was 2-3 years ago, wasn't it?
Well, it's quite a while ago actually.
Yeah.
It's, it was one.
Wow.
In fact, 9 years ago, Peter. It'd been
No
quite long, yeah.
way.
So it'd have been It's Not Me, It's You, the one that had the fear and versus.
Yeah, 9 years ago.
Yep. It's tough life when you're having fun. I really liked that album, and I thought that album channeled her amusing acerbic wit and astuteness for writing about everyday life and herself, and I think she's perhaps not given enough credit for her lyrical ability. In fact, I would say that of the style of writing that she has, of that self-confessional style, I think she's probably one of the best the UK's produced in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And lyrically, as you said, I mean, the album is strong. I mean, there's I like it. It's come on then at the start when she's going, yeah, whether I'm a bad wife. You saw on the socials, read it online, all that kind of stuff, and you go, you know, you're phoning up to say you know me. If that's the truth, why does nobody phone me? She turns a good phrase still. Musically, I thought the album was a bit more hit and miss. Whilst obviously it was nice to hear our friend Giggs showing up on track 2.
It wasn't Giggs, was it?
Yeah.
I meant the rapper.
Ryan, I think.
I think you mean Stormzy.
Trigger Bang.
You haven't quite figured that out yet.
But yeah, it's just there was. I felt the urban sound of a few of the earlier tracks wasn't really working for me musically.
No.
I was a bit kind of like bored. But then, as you say, Family Man and Apples and 3, in the middle of the album, it's a really good threesome of tracks, and you kind of pulled back in and reminded why, if you like Lily Allen, why you like Lily Allen. Again, it then kind of drops off a bit for me again, but I quite like Pushing Up Daisies and Cake and the record. So I would say for me it's a kind of an okay album, not a great album, but given all the shit she had to put up with and all the hassle she gets from the newspapers, glad to see her back.
Yeah.
Doing what she's should be doing, making music.
Yeah, exactly. Great.
So changing musical styles again. We go into the second album from Courtney Barnett, Tell Me How You Really Feel. We reviewed her collab with Kurt Vile last.
Yeah, I remember. Last year. Please tell me that was last year.
Yes, the end of last year. An album we both liked when they did some new songs and then covered
each other.
Covered other songs.
Yeah, it was a good album.
So this is the second full album alone, as it were. And I like this. I like this record. It's short. That's the reason I like it. But we're always talking about searching for decent indie albums and stuff like that, and struggling to find decent indie albums. The sound of this record is kind of 2 parts The Strokes and 1 part Liz Phair. Starts off with that kind of slow bleeding, relentless kind of riff that runs through the whole of the opening track, Hopefulness. And it's a great track. It kind of sets the scene lyrically for the whole album. It's an album about kind of relationships and equality and kind of things there. But I like just some of the titles of the songs are just hard not to laugh at. Crippling self-doubt and a general lack of confidence.
Yeah.
I'm not your mother. I'm not your bitch. Walking on eggshells, almost kind of summing up what they're about. But I particularly like Nameless, Faceless in the middle of the album, which is literally talking about the kind of people that kind of stalk women and fool them around and stuff. And it has a great line towards the end of it when he says, "I could eat a bowl of alphabet soup and spit out better words than you," which I thought was just a brilliant line. And it just rattles along. It's an album that some albums are really, I think, are really easy to listen to. Some albums are a bit of a chore when we're doing this podcast. This one, I got to the end quite quickly and thinking, oh, it's finished. Oh, that was alright.
Yeah.
Back to start, listen again. Thought, yeah, this is the bits we heard off on that collab album. Thinking, yeah, this is that, and then more. Yeah. I like it.
It made me want to go back and listen to the collaboration she did with Kurt Weill again. I mean, not in a good way, as opposed to I needed to go back and listen to that again because that was better. No, I mean in a good way, and something else I haven't said for a while. And I mean in a good way. It's a solid album. It's a solid, really nice mix of indie, as you said, rock and a bit of blues, and some quite abrasive lyrics. Abrasive. I'll say a bit abrasive.
It's all the A's, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all the A's. Alongside some more fellow vibes.
Velo and mellow, yeah.
Yes, mellow vibes. Yes. Again, I really enjoyed the album. I think I agree with you. Nameless, Faceless is interesting. Is up there as one of the better tracks. Love the title of Crippling Self-Doubt and General Lack of Confidence.
Yeah.
Love the song as well. It was really funny. And I remember this from the again, this album and the previous album we talked about the collaboration. There's a great sort of line of comedy almost in some of this very serious songwriting, which again, a bit like the previous album, it's a good turn of phrase, to use a turn of phrase. Yeah, enjoyed this.
Moving on, we move on to I believe the 9th studio album by Oneohtrix, Point Never, Age Of. We reviewed the last one.
Did we?
Since then there was a unsurprisingly there was a film soundtrack in between then. You can't imagine that.
Really, can't imagine
that. Yes, so 9th album from the bloke whose name I can't remember, but Peter.
The bloke whose late substitution into the podcast took us away from an all-female lineup.
It did, yeah.
Yeah, the exception of Matt from the National, obviously.
True.
So
his guest appearance.
His guest appearance. I put in my notes here one thingy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I put OPN. It was his.
This was the final album I listened to in preparation, and I mean, as you know, I'm not even going to bother talking about the track listings and stuff because
no, that's
it kind of just all falls into one long continuous soundscape. Soundtrack, indeed, I was reminded a lot of the work that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross have done. Collaborated on in recent years in terms of not just their soundtracks but some of their instrumental stuff as well.
Yes.
Away from the Nine Inch Nails name, although they're now that as well. More on that maybe later. So it's it's all right. I have to admit, I think this is another album that probably warrants repeated listenings if you can handle it. If out there, disrupted sounds, noodling, and instrumentals are your thing. And by disrupted, I was very much reminded of a Nine Inch Nails sort of sound. On a few of the later tracks, I think it's Myriad Industries and Warning. One of those, I got a real sort of nin, you know, with the plucking of the guitar string put through God knows how many machines. But at other times, it just sort of gently floated along. I quite like the instrumental aspects of this album. I found his vocals a bit annoying. I was reminded of that. I was reminded of the guy out of Tears for Fears, not the vocalist of Tears for Fears, the crazy one that did all the, you know, him.
Not Roland.
Yes, him, Roland.
Zabal.
Yeah, Zabal. Yeah, I was reminded of him vocally for some reason, and I was like, that's not him, is it? You know.
Well, that's good because it's hard to hear the vocals because obviously the vocals are all turned up to 11 decibel on auto tune to.
Yeah.
Make them sound warped and
wow. But that just speaks volumes for Roland then, doesn't it? So I found that a little bit okay, we're doing vocals now. Not I was a bit meh on this one. That's probably coming across.
Harpsichord ahoy. This album is like it's there's a lot of harpsichord going on.
Yeah.
It's imagine a kind of pastoral chamber music and quite straight pastoral chamber music thing, then performed by a avant-garde dance artist, and is pretty much the direction you go in with this record. And it's a mixture of that kind of thing and some actual songs, which is quite interesting because there are actual slightly warped, but some actual songs on it as well. What I quite like about this record is I kind of liked the way the songs were kind of almost musically sculpted by taking bits from various genres here, there, and everywhere, and trying to meld them into a cohesive thing. I was reminded somewhat, particularly on the actual songs, like Babylon and I think the Station, particularly, of the last Bon Iver album, which also had that same, particularly with the vocal treatment and the kind of choppiness of the arrangement of the songs.
Yeah,
it was very much akin to that. That, but there's still enough in there that's kind of actually musical pop. Babylon, which is probably the main pop song on the album, which is the second track. It's like almost like a warped country folk track, and Station similarly is is a kind of almost pure pop song that then kind of melts away into almost like a kind of a Tangerine Dream kind of soundtrack piece at the end. I kind of like this record. When I really knew I kind of liked this record is when we got to We Take It, which is really noisy, choppy, lots of kind of loops going back on themselves and stuff like that. And I thought, but this is what modern instrumental mental dance music should sound like. This is fun. And again, I got through this album really, really quickly, and I would say it probably loses its way slightly towards the very end, where it kind of does get a bit bland.
Yeah.
But it gets a bit bland because of how engaging the first half, the first 2/3 of the album are, because it's always kind of moving and changing, and I kind of like that. Kind of hooked me in, and particularly in the context of the other albums we're listening to in this podcast. It was like so different and fresh almost that like I thought, yeah, like this.
Oh, there we go.
Can I say the same about the fourth album from Lykke Li, though? That's the thing.
Can you?
Yes and no.
Okay.
My problem... I'm going to start with my problem with this record. My problem with this record is I own the two previous records of hers, and they're both really, really good.
Yeah.
And particularly her second album,
Yes.
Wounded Rhymes, which is, frankly, a work of pop genius as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
This album fails to live up to those two records, which is my starting point for this album. Had I not heard those two records, I would probably be slightly more positive about it, because I think taken in and of itself, it's still probably going to be one of the best records of its ilk this year, because there's still enough lyrical and musical interest to make it a worthwhile record to listen to. It gets off to a cracking start, and Hard Rain is classic Lykke Li, really strong modern pop music, great lyrics, great chorus. After that, for me, it's a bit kind of a bit too much box ticking modern R&B influenced kind of cookie cutter pop, and I'm kind of waiting for more of her to come back out and kind of take control and make things a bit more different and interesting. I think there are moments when that happens. Last piece I quite like. So Sad So Sexy, which is the title track, I think it's a really, really strong pop tune. Better Alone, I think, is a cracking ballad, which oddly enough keeps reminding me of Kate Bush and Peter Gabriel's Don't Give Up.
Yeah.
Just kept coming to my head. It's one of those things that doesn't actually sound like that at all, but there was just something about the way the song's structured.
Yeah,
like, literally,
H's keeps crashing back into this podcast, doesn't it?
Yeah, they just kind of kept doing that to me.
Yeah.
Lyrically, I also thought that I think some of the ideas in it were hammered a bit too much. There's several cigarette and smoking analogies going on to do with relationships that seems to be kind of, when one might have been enough, that seems to crop up in a couple of the tracks on the album. So I got to the end of the album, and it's a short album, again, another short record, so it zaps by quite quickly, thinking, yeah, this is an okay record, but because I know she's capable of really good records, not just okay pop records, it's ultimately, for me at least, disappointing.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Genuinely.
I'm sure she won't mind.
I'm sure she won't. I kind of see where you're coming from, because I remember the previous albums we listened to together having quite a strong impact. Whereas, so I was perhaps expecting greater things myself based on our previous experience, and then maybe feeling slightly underwhelmed. Not as much as yourself, but yeah, by the result. I actually thought the album's a great combination again of artful pop and sort of gentle R&B.
Yeah,
I've written here.
Gentle R&B.
Hey, sweeping sounds and gentle R&B, delivered with cutting lyrics, as you say. Very sort of cutting lyrics. There were a lot of individual tracks I quite liked on the album. So I mean, I've written here on my notes, sort of like the last piece, Better Alone, I flagged up as one of the better songs on the album as well, along with Bad Woman, and Hard Rain. I also found quite catchy. I think this is going to be one of those albums that sort of, again, demands repeated listening just to pick up the little sort of nuggets and clever little twists on things. At the start of Jaguars in the Air, which is a ridiculous and yet somehow catchy title for a song.
Yes.
There's a little gentle Major Tom style strumming on a guitar right at the beginning, just buried in there, sort of little Bowie sort of moment, which I it made me smile. I picked that up instantly. Although it's not obvious. So I think there's just little things like that, and you go back and listen to it again. I'm sure there's other things that the Easter eggs that I've missed, but so I like that, and I imagine it's one of those albums that you just, again, repeated listening just keeps delivering these little nuggets and things. But yeah, I can sympathise where you're coming from. I perhaps didn't not dislike it. I perhaps didn't feel as underwhelmed as yourself.
Yeah. So, album of the podcast.
Oh well, I think, to be honest with you, I think based on a couple of your reviews, I think there's a couple of things I've missed, and particularly around Nathalie Prass and not Oneohtrix, but
Courtney.
who else did we listen to? All right, we'll stick with Nathalie Prass, possibly Oneohtrix. I perhaps need to go back and listen again, and I think you've swayed me on a couple of those. But I think for me, my album podcast is Chvrches.
Mine is Nathalie Prass, but I agree the Chvrches album is a fine record, and certainly their best since the debut album.
Yep.
The middle album was a bit meh.
Yeah, agree. Love is dead, everyone.